Welcome to the Service MVP podcast, and I am Joe Crisara, America's Service Sales Coach. And I have with me today Mr. Darren Dixon from Fixify. If anybody doesn't realize, Darren has a great depth in this industry. He's at the ground floor of a lot of amazing things that have changed the industry to what it is today. And I would definitely, he's a very special guest and somebody I highly respect. Darren, say hi to our audience. How you doing?
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here today.
Well, Darren, definitely you've got a lot. You had your fingers involved in a lot of different things, and it seems like there's just no end to the kind of stuff that you've been involved with. It's kind of like you're like Forrest Gump. You've been involved in a lot of different best practices and things like that. Why don't you give people a little bit of you've been there for all these things. And it's like, now who is this guy? When I met you a couple like last year, I'm like, Jesus, this guy's been involved in everything. It's like it's funny because you're walking a separate path that a lot of us older people like my age who have been walking down, but I didn't know you were responsible for a lot of the stuff that you were doing out there. But Darren, could you give us a little snapshot or a thumbnail of all the things that you've been involved with that led us up to the point where you and I got the chance to meet?
Sure. I'd be happy to. So I was recruited in as a straight commission salesperson in 1995 in Las Vegas, Nevada. Um, Started as a comfort advisor, as I said, and then became a sales manager a couple years later. Was about to quit the industry, and the owner of the company said, "Hey, you can't quit because you are my heir apparent." And I said, "What does that mean?" And he said, I was planning on retiring and having you take over." I was like, "Oh, okay, well, I didn't know that." So that's good information to have. But long story short is, um, we were the first 1 hour heating and air conditioning. So, there we were instrumental in developing the real business plan and the real business model, which is not what a lot of people think it is today. I think sometimes I see that 1 hour gets a bad rap because technicians say, "Oh, well, they don't fix things, they only sell things." Well, I mean, I can't speak for how people do things today, but I can tell you that the model that we built was 100% about consumer focus and doing an awesome job for consumers. We built that company significantly. I was fortunate enough to be one of the right hand men to Jim Abrams. I was over the development of franchise and retail development, and I worked with all the companies that wanted to sell their businesses. So I had the opportunity to see a lot of things. We had 26 locations. We did about $145 million at that time, which I guess in today's dollars would equate to probably somewhere over 300 million or so. So we had, it was a good sized business. We had lots of franchisees. We had lots of companies that we taught. And so my perspective on the industry really was shaped by a much larger look at the industry than just being in a single operation and going out and fighting the good fight each day.
Well, that's great. Well, when I said you were like Forrest Gump, I meant that you're only there for all these important things in the history of HVAC. I didn't mean that your intelligence was the same as Forrest Gump.
It's all right. Somebody might argue that point too.
I wasn't trying to imply that at all. No, because I definitely, when I heard you talk at another event, I tell you what, I'm like, dude, I was like, usually I'm at these events like blah, blah, blah. I hear people speak the same thing over, but I heard it was definitely a different thing. And I want everybody to kind of expand on that. So it's Darren, I'd like Darren to talk about at least three things he could tell us. But I would say this program, we try to keep it to about three things, but it could be more if you want to. I'm not trying to restrict you to that, but three things that are that HVAC and service contractors have to keep their eye on in the future of the service business. Makes sense? To make sure that there's things coming up. And I would say Darren, I would classify, he doesn't realize it, but I would classify him as a futurist, somebody who has lived enough stuff in the past where he can see trends. And that's where he involves himself in businesses like Fixify, where he's looking at the future. And just like, I always consider myself like that too. I'm like, I'm always thinking about doing a business now that's ready for the future. Sometimes I'm ahead of myself, but But eventually the future catches up to us, and it's
Yeah.
just the right time, right? So Darren, could
Yeah.
you go ahead and start with like, what's the first thing that people should make sure they keep their eye on, that to not have a to make sure that they don't find themselves with a blind spot with the upcoming changes in the service industry? I know specifically you have the HVAC industry, but really it applies to everybody. Go ahead and tell us.
Sure. Well, you talk about being a futurist, and it's funny that you say that, because that is, I guess, if I had to classify myself as something, that is what I classify myself as. Just the ability to see patterns and be able to study and apply information in other industries as it pertains back to our industry. And so when you talk about what are three things that contractors should be paying attention to, I guess the first thing that I would say, this is not necessarily prioritized in biggest impact to lowest impact, but perhaps it will end up that way. But the biggest thing that contractors need to be paying attention to is that the business model that they are currently pursuing has already shifted, and they just don't realize it yet, because they don't have the same purview as someone who's looking at a much larger sector of the business. And the shift has happened already over the last couple of years, and we say that the pendulum has already swung and it's on its way back now. And so if when you look at trends, I mean, you've got visionaries, and then you've got pioneers, and then you've got early adopters, and then you've got general participants, and then you've got laggards, right? And so the laggard thinks that what he's doing is current, but the pioneer already realizes that the pendulum has swung and it's already coming back across, and it's now going to kind of lap the laggard. Does that make sense?
It
So
does. It's like the current thing is actually the past thing. He's
it
living in the
is.
past, more
It,
else.
it, it is. And so, when you look at the S curve of business, there's all these inflection points on when things happen. And there's industry stages. There's four of them. There's an introductory phase, there's a maturing phase, there's a growth phase, and then there's a decline phase. Excuse me, I mixed two of those up. It's the introduction, it's growth, it's maturity, and then it's decline. And the talk that I was giving that you're referring to was a discussion about that. And so if you think back, Joe, to our days, our earlier days in doing this, there were very few contractors that understood the method that we were using on high value representation and pricing right, and communicating to consumers about replacement sales. And the industry was still very service repair oriented back in the day. You remember?
Yes,
And
totally.
it took a long time. It took a long time for generational changes to happen. And what happens is you get a business owner who subscribes to something, he teaches their employees, and then an employee will grasp that, decide to go out in business for themselves, and they will follow the same philosophy and hire younger people to come to work for them. And then those younger people learned it that way, and they just think that's the way it's always been. And so if you take a couple generations of time that go by, like we have now, you got a lot of contractors that are out there thinking that, this method and this model that they're following is just, oh man, it's just always the way it's going to be, because it's still new to them, but it's already shifted and it's already changed. And what it's changed to is the vast majority of consumers that are buying subscription plans for protection on their home. And so this whole wing it and let's just see what happens and have somebody come over here and fix our stuff is becoming a less and less popular. And especially as millennials have become the largest group of homeowners in the US, they are very much about subscription products that feel just like having a Netflix. I pay it and it just comes out once a month and I don't have to think about it. And that's the amount of management that I have to do for my home repairs, because right. And it's the most popular growing method for service that there is today. And so you've got contractors in every single marketplace. See, this is interesting. This is how you can spot it, is you've got sophisticated contractors in every marketplace, all telling the same story. It's getting harder and harder. right? It's getting harder and harder, where it's getting harder to get more customers. It's getting harder the cost of acquisitions going up, and the difficulty in being able to generate and convert replacement sales from service oriented visits is becoming more and more difficult for contractors. And in fact, many of them that I know, in some of the most sophisticated that I know, are very far behind where they were last year. So so that's the biggest impact, is to understand that the business model has shifted. And so, you know, look, I like to tell you a truth and then give you something to hang on to, so that you can anchor. So there's a storm, but here's something to anchor to, is that there are methods that some companies are working on, and we're one of them, to be able to provide products to contractors that they can offer to their own customers, that are subscription products. Because, in most states you have to be licensed to be able to offer these products, and you can't just go out there and go, oh, well, we're just going to offer a protection plan that to a customer, because in many cases you'll be putting your butt in hot water because you're not licensed to do so, right? So that's one thing that's very important that I would say contractors have to be paying attention to. And the second is really, I think, one of the reasons that the first is an issue. And the second is that the consumer business model that our industry follows, and I hate to say this, and I don't want this to sound like it's generally true of all service providers, because it's certainly not generally true of all service providers, okay? But when you take a business process and you say, you know what, this business process works, then every time it gets duplicated in somebody else, it's missing some of the fidelity, if you will, of what created it, okay? So now what we have is, we've got a sector of companies in this industry that think that offering a cheap tune-up and sending somebody over to the customer's house to sell them something is the way you're supposed to run this business. That the guys that make money, that's the way they do it. So that's the way that we have to do it too. And what they don't realize is that in doing so, they have created a value friction in the industry of what I call false value. Because think about it this way: does a $19 tune-up make money?
No.
You lose money, right? You lose money.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if you offer the customer something that is designed to lose money from the beginning, the only way it works is if you have a second agenda. And when you get there, you have this second agenda. And that second agenda is the problem in our industry, is that everybody's got this race to the bottom on how can I provide the cheapest tune-up to consumers so that I can get somebody over there so that we can try to sell them something. And that is an issue.
Yeah, it's like as a futurist, you have to be a historian, because that's called bait and switch. Basically, that's as old as selling encyclopedias. By giving somebody a free give me one free book, and then what the rest of them?
Stay at our hotel for a couple days for free, and then by the time before you leave, you got to sit through this presentation,
get a timeshare. Yeah, you get
the difference is the timeshare industry tells you that it's going to happen. Our industry, somebody over your house, and you think you're getting a $19 tune-up, when in reality, the guy's following your wife all over the house trying to get her to buy this, that, and the other, and so that's an issue, right? And that model is being rejected by consumers. And like I said, I think that's large in part why it has ultimately, the business model has shifted. But the protection plan business model that we spoke about first, it's not new. It's only new here. I mean, it's not even that new here, but there's a really big company out there that has millions of these protection plans, and they in their annual study or annual report, they're publicly traded. In their annual report, I was reading it, and they said that this was a very popular way that they plan to continue to generate and grow shareholder value in the future, and that 56% of the market is still available. So I look at that and go, okay, so that means 44% of the market is not still available, which means that we're out there, contractors are out there competing for a customer that a market base that has 44% of them are already married to somebody else. They're already in a different plan, you know. And Fixify, yep. I can also tell you from the inside that at Fixify, we integrate with a large company, and we're the administrators of those claims. We dispatch the calls, and we're the administrator of the jobs, and we do the payments and everything. So I can tell you that it's not theory, it's fact. So that's two things, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The third thing that is, I think, is the biggest thing, and the third thing is that, you know, for a long time, and this goes back again also to the talk that I gave, is the fourth phase, which is the decline phase. It happens because during the maturity phase, tangential businesses within the industry start looking at the viability of the industry, and they start recognizing, hey, there's a lot of money to be made here. And so, you know, during COVID, you saw a lot of industries start focusing, and after COVID especially, right, you saw a lot of industries that lost a lot of money during COVID in hospitality and in real estate transactions, that looked at our industry and said, man, this thing is recession proof. And so, and pandemic proof. And so you saw tangential money come into our industry and start buying companies for above market value. And no matter how much we want to breathe the ether and tell ourselves that these businesses are worth this kind of multiple, they're proving that they're not. And it was definitely a seller's market. So, you know, hats off to those that did it. But the problem now is that if you take all of this big witch's brew that's cooking around here, what is happening is some of the declines that they're experiencing is forcing them to look at other ways to try to make money in this industry. And it's not just pressing and hitting on contractors. You have to go up the commerce chain, and you have to look at what is the number one way that contractors, especially in HVAC, make money. It's in selling replacement systems. So if service is declining and service relationships are declining in the nature in which they exist with protection plans and warranties and things like this, the next thing to focus on is, well, how do we still get and grab a hold of the replacement sale? And the replacement sale today, most contractors rely on the nature of the service episode to get replacement sales. The biggest blind spot that contractors have, as far as I can tell today, is that they do not know how, and they are not skilled at marketing to the proactive buyer.
Somebody's looking to get ahead of it, not wait for the breakdown of the cracked heat exchanger or bad compressor. They're already kind of like, you know what, let me look into this now and kind of like check it out, right, and see what it's all about.
According to the HRI, 20% of all replacement sales are proactive buyers. So if you look at, and the biggest place that proactive buyers want to do business is online. So, and that, you know, this is data that's available. Like, this isn't Darren says so. This is data that's available. And that's what you mentioned, what do futurists do? Well, we certainly study the past, because you have to know where you came from to chart a line of where it's going and understanding the impacts and the influences that are there. So the biggest issue that I see today is that the pressure that manufacturing is experiencing with pent-up demand and inventory stacking up because of soft sales cycles through the service side of the business this year is causing them to rethink the way that the relationships between contractors and manufacturers and distributors exist. And
right.
So
to sum up the three things: number one, the subscription-based model, the way people like to be involved with things that are like, even the monthly payment on a system would be a subscription sort of thing for the next 10 years or whatever we're going to do, or the service membership or a warranty that guarantees things, everything in the system. Those are number one. Number two, the low price thing where I think consumers are more successful. It's like the low price model is gone, where people online are sophisticated enough to know if I spend too little, it's not going to be very good, right? Like the
Yep,
cheapest thing that in our head, we're like, we don't need a salesperson to tell us that. If I find something that's the cheapest, most likely it's going to say, what's the catch, right?
yep,
I think we're all number two. And number three is that the buying experience has shifted from that there's a proactive element to it, that if we just put the information in front of some people, and I would say in my world, I call that being a window and not a door that stands in the way of those solutions. If the service provider can be a window to show the solutions, they'd be at the forefront of those 20% of the people looking to proactively buy this stuff,
for
as
sure. I
opposed to
mean,
having to sell it to them. They just buy it, right? Would that be a
yeah,
way of putting it?
yes, and authenticity and transparency are very important to consumers today. And I mean, it's always been important, but there were, as you said, there were doors standing in the way to information. Well, those doors aren't standing in the way to information anymore. And I can buy a house online, I can buy a car online, I can buy anything online today. And that's the preferred method for consumers to want to be able to do business. I want to be able to do business from the comfort of my own home without a salesperson in front of me. And it is impacting our industry as much as it is any other. And the issue that I see is that there are some decoy products that are out there that are designed to look like they're e-commerce solutions, but they're not really. They're
Right.
not authentic. They want to act like, oh, we're going to give you a price, but we don't actually let you build anything and buy it this way. It actually is, well, we won't actually show you the price until you give us all your contact information so that we can bug you for the rest of your life. And consumers don't like that type.
Oh my God, that's the most aggravating. The most aggravating thing is to
Yeah,
put me through 5 or 6 forms and then say we'll email you the and we'll have somebody contact you, and
yep,
then you get dive bombed with like 50 people,
yep.
from 50. It's like being in prison of telemarketers dive bombing me with stuff, because
Oh
they just
yeah.
sell it to everybody, right? And
Well,
that's
and
really
it's
where it
and
gets a
not
bad
only
name with
that,
the e-commerce. Make sense?
yeah, yeah, totally. And now with AI, it's not just phone calls, it's texting, right? And
Oh,
I was getting texted by this. I went on a contractor's website, and they had a what I call a decoy product for e-commerce, and so I played with it a little bit, and I put my contact information in just to see, and I started getting text messages immediately, and they were formatted to feel like there was actually somebody on the other side of it
mhm.
texting me, and I made a comment back, and it gave me a response. And so I responded again the same way just to see, and it just kept coming back. And every time I'd say, awesome, good, great, thanks. And it just kept peppering me. And then, so my point is this: if we don't, as consumers, like that kind of stuff, then why are we using that kind of stuff in our own businesses? I mean,
Mm.
it's, if we know that as a consumer, we don't like it, then why are we treating our own customers this way? And
Hmm.
so there's been a loss of consumer centrism in our industry that I think is a really big issue.
Well, I tell you what, every time I've heard you talk, when I saw you at that event, uh, I knew you were somebody I was going to be a friend with. That's why I ran up to you and found you after you talked.
I
I said,
remember. I remember.
we got to talk. I said, because you made me feel uncomfortable, and because you were telling me things I currently, my paradigm was different. It was a different paradigm, and you made me and that's why I knew, like, man, I got to learn more about this. I gotta see
Yeah.
to go into it. So I immediately say, I used to say something like, "Oh, that's not going to work. He's full of it," type of thing. Right? It's easy to say that, but I said no.
That's what we
There's
want
some,
to say. That's what
because
we
I could say
want to be true.
it's the easy way out, right? But I said what I really said was that with a guy with this much depth being at the starting point of like the 1 hour and things like that, I'm like, I got to listen to this because this is somebody who's already he's been through your depth of experience, kind of which is something that nobody can replace in you. So it definitely made me want to learn more. And then last time we talked, you showed me the Fixify solution, which frankly I was like, I'm not sure if that's really going to be something. But then I saw the light. I'm like, you know what? That's something that could work, especially to give customers a better service, because it's a true, authentic platform that, here's what I saw, that actually did do what you're supposed to do, enough to get people to say, wow, for $140 a month, I could afford that. I mean, that's, yeah, I got to talk to these people. So it gets you to the point where it's like, it got a reality-based pricing system that isn't hidden behind the email or some kind of price wall that you have to give us your firstborn before you get it, before you get it a price, because that's aggravating, right? This is something where it's a transparent program that's a reality-based thing. And of course, it's like, to me, it's like showing people the basic options that just for the equipment. And then of course, you're going to need some additional stuff. The human element is still involved. So Darren, tell us a little bit about that. I mean, I think those three things are great you mentioned. Tell us about how the human element in the future of HVAC, is the human element still involved in this in the future, or how do you feel about that? Tell us about that.
Well, first of all, I don't think there's only ever one way to do anything. So not 100% of the people don't ever want to do one thing, right? Except when. But I believe that it is technology that is enabled by humans and not humans enabled by technology. So I believe that what we will see, and what you're referring to that I showed you with what we built with Fixify.shop, which is a true e-commerce solution that I guess you could call it the Shopify for home services. We host stores for contractors that want to sell to their customers through this online process. And then the same concern that every contractor I've ever heard has said is like, but how do you know that what they picked was right? How do you know that the consumer went through and built the right thing? And so what it does is it incorporates a virtual visit all built into the product, right? So in the product, the customer actually schedules their appointment, and it includes a virtual visit with a design consultant to be able to verify with the customer that what they've chosen for their home is a perfect match. And that's what the name of the product is. It's called Perfect Match. And
in a way, that's what I saw that I think it could fit in. The human element is the confirmation of what was selected is the thing that is the powerful element. Like, okay, so I saw you chose the system. We did have the air quality solutions. How important is the health of your family? Well, it's very important. Yeah, I noticed you didn't choose that as the reason why. Oh, I didn't even see that. Like, yeah, can I go ahead and show you what it would be if you did that, or shall let's keep that? You want to leave that out, or you want me to show you what it would be? Yeah, show me what. Oh, look at it. It'd be $149 a month.
Yeah, nothing.
It's like,
nothing
so it's like that kind of a thing.
Joe, nothing that we do is designed to take the human element out. It's designed to create consistency, because the greatest power of success comes from consistently doing the right things over and over and over and over and over again. So
giving humans the tool to be consistent, because truthfully, none of us are consistent. We're all very inconsistent, and if we looked in the mirror, we'd all say, yeah, some days I feel like this, some days I say this. Like, why did I say that? Like every time, if you look in the mirror and say, I went to that party, why did I say that to that guy or whatever? Yeah, we all do things we don't mean to do. But I think the technology, what I saw with what you approached there, was like you're kind of eliminating the possibility of doing this wrong. So the only way that emerges is that the salesperson has to do it right in a way. Does that make sense there to me?
Yeah, it does make sense. And it enables the consumer to be able to do business the way that they want to do business. And it's like I said, it's not going to replace every aspect of what we do, but there is a big percentage of people that want to do it this way. And if 60% of your customers today, Joe, said, hey, listen, Joe, 60% of them said, Joe, we want you to include this kind of teaching in what you're teaching us, would you ignore it?
Hell no, I couldn't. I can't.
If you do, they're going to go get it from somewhere else.
Right.
The reason that we built Fixify.shop is that we wanted to be able to create a hosted environment for contractors to have their own branded stores, so that they can link them to their websites and give their consumers, future and existing customers, the ability to do business in a way that they want to do business. And it's about an omni-channel approach to making sure that you are connecting with all of the customers that you have the opportunity to connect with.
It definitely is a different paradigm, and definitely it's not as I will have to be fair. I think that what I'm currently teaching, or what we currently taught in the past, now moving into the future, are just variations of the past in a way, and now kind of where we're here. But I do think that this is a whole nother path that still needs to be taught. It's not something that you can just give your people and the thing does it for you. There is the human element, which is to create that authenticity, like you said, and what's in your heart, which is something that AI cannot do. It's something it can never really do. It'll probably even AI would even. I can't participate in that. That's something that's we're not qualified to talk on. But truthfully, I think that's where the human element is. And of course, us two humans, I'm proud to be one of them that's working with you, Darren, and trying to help this move forward to the next level. And definitely, I'm glad that we had this conversation today. What's anything that's in your heart that you want to share with contractors before we wrap this? Give us our final thoughts here, Darren, if you want to just give us a final thought to contractors that are out there grinding it out, working so hard.
Well, first of all, I want you to know that I admire entrepreneurs, and I admire guys that go out and I say guys, I mean people. I don't mean men.
Get what you mean. Get what you mean.
Guys, you know what I mean?
It's you guys. It means women too.
I admire. First of all, I love this industry. I've spent my entire adult life in it, and I realized that I was meant to swim in some deeper water earlier in my career, in that I share what needs to be said and not necessarily what's the flashiest and most glitzy popular thing to say at the party. And I care about our industry, and I care about everybody that's out there doing their thing. And I just, if contractors don't respond to this, they're going to lose the opportunity for it, because it will continue to go up the river, and you know what I mean. So the fact is that if you don't want to lose the opportunity to serve customers that way, then you have to participate. So take good care of your customers. Make sure that they are the focal point, and how they want to do business is the focal point that you focus on. And then make sure you are very choosy about who you listen to.
That's good. And I'll tell you one thing. I would say that when it's somebody that has a solution like what you're working on, eventually when you see the solution, then someday Darren will be living rent free in your head, because of like, yeah, I should have listened to that dude who was telling me all this stuff. And Darren, thanks so much for being here, and thanks for sharing what's in your heart. And I know that deep down, just like it's not just a layer of experience, but just your matching up with technology and business processes, which can be very cold and calculated, but matching it in with that warm human spirit that you provide, that definitely, I think everybody gives trust in you, and definitely, I know I do. So when Darren Dixon talks, Joe Crisara listens. I can tell you that. So
Thanks, Joe,
Darren, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks, everybody. Take care, Joe.
Goodbye.